Hey, Canteeners, welcome to episode 58 of Culper's Canteen Cup. Lot going on, but we have persevered. What did the guy say in Josie Wells? Josh, when I kick it to you, you can say we have endeavored to persevere to give the shout outs up front because we know you guys don't listen to the guys and gals don't listen to the entire thing and you don't. But if you heard your shout outs early, maybe you'd stick around longer. So Josh, should give us a couple of shout outs.
All right, hey, quick shout out to my dad. He's been kind of down under the weather, and in and out of the hospital. He's been in there often enough. I think they're going to name a wing after him. So, Dad, hope you get to feeling better. Hope you get out of there, and hope you get back to being yourself. Hey, another shout out to one of our listeners, Ryan, up in Woodbridge area, Virginia. Actually, there's another Ryan up there in Springfield, Virginia. Hey, both of you guys, appreciate you listening, appreciate you interacting with us on the Facebooks and the Googles. And so that's my shout outs for this episode. I'll throw it over to Roger so he can give some.
Is your dad going to share this episode?
Considering my dad doesn't have social media, he may tell somebody about it, but he may not share it.
One, I hope your dad gets better, and I hope he's healthy and all that other good stuff. But I think you're missing the whole point of shout outs. The whole point of shout outs for people will share this stuff for us. But now it's we don't recognize a lot of the folks. Some of the folks we interact with on Facebook, and a lot of them we get, believe it or not, we get a lot of texts, we get a lot of Facebook Messenger. Some hangouts and stuff like that. So it's, one of the cool things about the show is a guy, Mike, that I've known for years that I probably hadn't spoken to in 15, 20 years or whatever. But, friend of a friend on Facebook, which is like the only good thing about Facebook is that you do connect with folks that you would have probably lost touch with forever. But he was actually one of my mentors back in the day when I was a young private, and he was a staff sergeant at the time. And along with another guy, Joe, who I think, Josh, you were supposed to go eat lunch with, but he's a dedicated listener. And here's the crazy thing about Joe. So we have been playing Xbox together for probably 15 years and never met this dude. And what's crazy about it is, especially for you folks out there that on like the Xbox community or whatever, like all of these people I play with have known my kids since they were like 3 or 4. Like they remember my boy, couldn't wrap his hands around the controller and getting on Call of Duty or whatever it was and playing. And now it's like, yeah, my boy's grown up and he's in college and this and that. So it's, it's kind of weird because they've watched him grow up through the video games. But to both of you, Mike and Joe, we definitely appreciate you listening out there. It's, we definitely appreciate the feedback. And I think even, more surprising is, what I would consider Mike and Joe to be very middle America, blue collared workers. And I think when we look back at it, that's kind of who we want to appeal to, because that's we want to be known as, and I think individually, you want to be like, oh, I'm a working guy, working gal, whatever, middle class, you want to appeal to those types of individuals. So both of them, solid, hard ass workers. Mike was a great NCO and really, I think hits the spot on like middle America and the kind of listeners that we strive to attain. So with that, I'll throw it out to Luke, and he can kick us off this week with our topics.
All right. Well, first, give a shout out again to Jed. Still need to reach out to Jed, ask him some questions about planning the website. He's a pretty smart guy, PhD. That doesn't mean he's smart, but I've met the guy. He is actually smart. Give a shout out to old Scott again, if he didn't hear last week, for saving that. Probably consider using that. And somewhat a veteran-owned business here. His wife actually owns a company called Limsaw. It's a really cool thing that you put on a front-end loader that will trim branches and stuff really high up. It just attaches real easy. It's about 90 pounds, and it's a really great product. Check them out at limb, as in tree limb, limsaws.com. So one more quick shout out, I guess. I grew up with a guy named Russell back in Amarillo. His brother is actually married to my sister now. It's kind of crazy that way, how things happen at Amarillo. And Russell wrote a book. He's been promising people that he's going to write a book, nonfiction humor, kind of nostalgic. It's called. It's not released yet. I'll let you know when it is, but it's called Suitcase Sleds, Basketball, and the Bros, an ode to growing up in the 1980s. I'm telling you, I edited and formatted that book for him, and I'm telling you, it's the three of us grew up in the 80s. Those were our wonder years, if you will. And I won't, it's just a good book, especially if you grew up in the 1980s in Amarillo. But if you grew up in the 1980s in a small town, it might hit a lot of chords. So, Russell, once again, I told you I really thought it was good, but here's the proof. I'm going out on the record and saying it was good. And Josh, I think that one of our listeners came to you with something and hoped that we would address it a little bit. I did some research on it, and I'm going to kick it to you because I do think it has national implications. That's the race in Virginia that they're going to vote on next year. I guess it's this time next year. And so I know you know more about it than I do. So why don't you kick us off with that?
Yeah, I don't know if I know more about it than you do because you're smarter than me. But yeah, so hey Ryan, so Ryan up in the Woodbridge area of Virginia hit us up and asked us a few questions on the Virginia governor's race, and asked us if he said he would love to hear us talk, discuss it a little bit. So it does have national implications. Actually, I was not familiar with it. I wasn't paying attention to it. It's happening in Virginia. I've considered Virginia a lost state at this point. Basically, well, I'll say a lost state. Basically, everything north of Fredericksburg, Virginia, I consider occupied territory. And that's kind of when you hit the demarcation line. It's way south of the Mason-Dixon, but that's northern Yankee country to me. So anyway, so started digging into it, and it's a little bizarre, man. You guys remember what's his face, McAuliffe, who was the governor back around like 2010, 2013 timeframe, somewhere back in there. Well, so he's running again. And it's kind of crazy because he appears to be taking kind of the same tack as Biden did during the presidential run. He's sticking to McAuliffe is a party line guy. He's a party line Democrat, nothing too crazy, and then turned around. He's making some overtures, to the far left. You're talking critical race theory, universal basic income, a couple of those other things, and so he appears to be gaining some steam. And the thing with Virginia, if you go back, the statewide that have been held since 2012, have lost all for state level elected offices, which is not awesome. But you go back and you look at it because we try to be data guy. From 1977 to 2017, there was only one election, and that was in 2013, in which the party in the White House actually won the governorship of Virginia. So it's hold some of that. One of the interesting things is the Republicans held a convention instead of a primary to choose their candidate. The Democrats the primary to choose. Republicans did it. Conventions, and they really had that, I think, a more conservative activist appeal. Especially when you're talking ideological candidates. And one of the articles that I pulled up, I can't remember which one it was, but this is their thoughts too, so not mine. So Luke, don't yell at me like you did, Bonnie, for plagiarizing stuff. So the primaries, it's a lot broader electorate in the primaries, obviously, and it kind of goes back to the electability of candidates. So some of the, so you got McAuliffe, he's well known, and Luke pointed out. So Virginia has a rule: you can only serve one term at a time. You can go back and run later, but you can't serve two consecutive terms. If I read that right, Luke. So a couple of other candidates for the Democratic candidates for governor. Everybody remembers old Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, right? everybody remembers him. You know, Pound Me Too movement. You know, accused of rape, sexual assault. Nobody, you know, everybody turned a blind eye to that one. You know, I guess they were too focused on his blackface and his KKK garb. No, they weren't focused on that either. They just didn't care because it was one of them. Um, and so it's already being talked about to where they're saying that Fairfax is potentially going to use the hey, I'm a black guy running against a white guy, and now is the time, you know, to get these old white out of elected office. So we'll kind of see what that rings. One thing is McAuliffe was pretty popular. He had a 60s, almost a 70% approval rating during his governorship, so he was pretty popular as a governor. I didn't have time to go back and look at his record, you know, some of the big things that he passed and some of the big things that he ran on. But he is absolutely 100% an establishment candidate, and so he's going to toe that party line, regardless. That'll be interesting to see, you know, what he has to say about Israel and everything, which I know we're going to get into later. So I got one more thing. I'm gonna throw it over to Roger. You know, the electability thing when it comes to candidates, and so, you know, McAuliffe won back in 2013. Obama backed him. You know, obviously Obama was electable. We elected him twice, but when you see the fissure that's happening in the Democratic Party right now, and some things that McAuliffe is saying, some of those harder left things, like, you know, some of this supporting critical race theory stuff, that, especially when in rural, you know, Virginia voters, you know, outside of occupied territory there in Northern Virginia. So, Roger, I'll throw it over to you. Get your thoughts on it.
When first of all, nobody cares about their rural Virginia voters because that's just not who determines the elections, sadly. But no, it's a good point. So for the Democrats, they're obviously holding their primaries. So you've got Jennifer Foy, Lee Carter, Justin Fairfax, Terry McAuliffe, and Jennifer McClellan. A lot of them taking, you know, the far left or, you know, maybe moving slightly to the center. And from some of the reading that I've done over the, you know, the past couple hours, couple days on it, you know, there was, you see it at the very beginning during the Obama years where they really ran against Obama. And they're kind of using the same thing with Trump now. Here's what's interesting on the GOP side. So, like you said, they held a convention, so they had every voter is a delegate then at a convention. It's 53,000 delegates, right? So incredible, pretty wild. And like you said, when you look at the you know, your ideology of those who attend conventions and delegates, they tend to be a little bit more committed. So, you know, we'll see how that shakes out in the tea leaves. What's interesting though is, you know, so Glenn Youngkin, if you don't know him, he is or I don't know if he still is or he was the co-CEO of the Carlyle Group. So if you've been there in Northern Virginia, those, you know, they've got a pretty prominent building. I think they got some lions or griffins or whatever the hell out front of their building or whatever. But guy's made all his money out there. You know, he's very well to do. He is pro-Trump, but he's not too far to the right. And I tell you, I actually like this guy. I like his mindset because here's one thing that has bothered me, and this isn't about Trump, but I'm tying this together. This is one thing that's bothered me over the last couple of weeks with Trump is that he's still looking at the, you know, illegitimate air quotes, elections and this and that, right? Election fraud, and that's still coming back, and he's still beating that drum. And we've talked about it before. I'm not saying that the election was clean, wasn't clean, whatever. We're beyond that. It is what it is. Biden is the president, and you've got to move forward. You can't continue to live in the past. You can obviously take action so that you have clean and fair elections going forward, but to continue to, you know, to beat on that, it just gives you, you know, PTSD or something like that. So Youngkin has been a Trump supporter, but he stopped just short of the whole election fraud thing. And I believe he's actually come out and denounced it like, hey, look, we're kind of beyond that. Let's, you know, again, party, you know, moving forward. We've got to get rid of that stuff. I want to believe that across the country, that's going to be the kind of way that the GOP finds their way forward. or at least I hope, is that, hey, you like Trump's policies. Because from what I can tell with Youngkin, and I don't know a whole lot about the guy, right? Just what we've read the last couple of days, but it seems like he is very pro-Trump as far as the policies. You just don't have the, the mean tweet. And thing is like the election fraud thing, right? So he doesn't beat up on that stuff there. So you're really getting kind of the best of both worlds, where you're getting that Trump policy, but maybe a little, tampered down demeanor and not just, cooking off at any given moment on Twitter or whatever. So it kind of got me thinking on, is that the way forward for the GOP? And it'll be kind of tough because as you're starting to see Trump more and more in the news, he is obviously backed Youngkin. So it'll be kind of curious to see if Youngkin really, does he really embrace that? Or he's like, hey, fantastic, and then continues on his own road. The other thing is when you look at when the legislature's been controlled by Republicans, Democrats, and the governors and this and that, primarily it's been controlled by the Republicans historically. 2020, took complete control. But prior to that, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, it's all Republican control. So it'll be kind of curious to see if it goes back, because from what I can tell and some of the rhetoric that's been out there is they tend to run against the current president, at least in the first couple terms. They did it with Obama. They did it with Trump. I expect that right now with Biden, that's going to be the big thing, is like, hey, you look at Biden, they're going to really make it about not so much McAuliffe, but hey, do you want the Biden policy here in Virginia? To take those national level policies and bring that down. So I'd be kind of curious to see how that shakes out. Another thing that we got to see how this impacts it is where voters are now. Because when you look at COVID, there's a lot of folks that are remote. And I understand that some of those remote means just at home 5-10 miles away, but look at what home prices have been like over the last year, right? They're skyrocketing. So what does that tell you? People are moving. So you say, hey, when you had that controlled amount of population in, Fairfax or Northern Virginia or whatever, you say, well, hey, have a lot of those people that got tired of living in that crowded area actually pushed out to some of the more rural area. And so then when you talk about your Democrat voters, they may actually get spread a little thinner, right, as they push farther and farther out. Hey, maybe I want to go out to Western Virginia, out like in Roanoke or something like that, or maybe I push a little farther south to Fredericksburg or, what have you. And then where you get that heavily GOP dominated areas, as your Democrat voters get pushed out there, they get spread a little bit thinner. So I do think it'll be a good litmus test. It'll be interesting to see what the deep dive is into, okay, I'd like to see voter turnout by county. Has it gone up? Has it gone up in rural areas? Is it going down in the big city areas? Because what we're seeing out here, and I'm a little removed being out in Arizona, but we are seeing a big push from like downtown Phoenix out to the suburbs. So I'll be kind of curious to see how that plays out. But I don't know, Luke. You think for the GOP? I mean, is that the way going forward? Is that to kind of play? Hey, yeah, I'm supportive of Trump's policies. Let's kind of put the election fraud thing behind us.
Yeah, I think that I'm seeing it, and I don't have a whole lot of time to do deep dives into stuff like this. There are a few races I am following. Josh is looking at me crazy like there's something wrong with my mic. Am I okay? All right. So, but what I'm seeing in a few of these races, especially in some deep red states, is the top tiered candidates are really trying to align themselves with Trump. Saying his name a lot, saying America first, saying some of those Trump taglines. And I really, in my opinion, if I was a commentator or a consultant for these people, I'd be like, look, you don't need to say Trump's name so much or at all. You don't need to say America first. Just come up with your own slogan that means the same thing, because that feeling is still there. You can communicate it to the voters without saying, Donald Trump, I'm his, he's my boy and all this stuff. Because I'm telling you, I think that ship has sailed. Trump is gonna throw his hat in the ring, but I don't see a whole lot of things changing. He's still, New York is the attorney general's putting him under the microscope, searching for a crime, and it's turned from a civil investigation to a criminal. And it's like we said, I think all three of us have said at one point or another on this podcast, is that you give the even a state government, you give them the opportunity just to look for a crime that you've committed, and they will find one. Everybody every day commits some sort of crime they don't even know that they're committing because it's against U.S. code or it's against this state, little bylaw that you can't wash your car, in the driveway on Tuesdays or whatever. So yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a real bellwether for the midterms. I'd be looking real close at the turnout in Virginia. I think you could expect the same type of turnout from Northern Virginia, the demarcation line that Josh was talking about. They regularly turn out really well. But the rest of the state, it is, Roger, that's a good point. It'll be interesting to see how things have shifted. What's going to be really interesting is the next census. That happens, what has happened every 4 years? 4, 6 years. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's strange. I'm looking at the housing market right now. The house, all over the place is just, I don't know. It's interesting. It's superheated for sure. Now, one thing, there's so much. We've got a bunch of topics we want to hit on, so I'm going to jump right into one of them. So, Josh, I think it was within the first few days of the Biden administration, he killed the Keystone Pipeline, which made some people very happy and some people very mad. Canada's still mad at us, and they're still trying to sue the U.S. And, whatever. I mean, Biden, he said he was going to do it. He did it. That's great. Now, there's a pipeline that runs basically from Russia all the way throughout Europe. I think it hubs in Germany. I believe it's called Nord Stream. There's two of them. There's the Nord Stream, the original, which is not nothing. And then there's Nord Stream 2. So what Biden did, and it's a major liquefied natural gas pipeline, along with petroleum, I believe, and some other products flow through that line, and it comes from Russia. Now, historically, Russia likes to turn the spigots off when a certain country is not doing what they think they should do. There was and not just the fuel spigots, the food spigots, everything. Russia will use that as leverage. So there were sanctions against Russian ships transporting materials to complete this pipeline running from Russia to Europe, Western Europe. And there was a German company, I've got the name here. There's a German company that's actually constructing it called Nord Stream 2 AG. And by the way, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline is nearly done. It's basically done. It's finished. It's done as in it's near completion. So what Biden decided would be a good idea is to lift sanctions, because there were sanctions on that German company, to lift sanctions on that company. Let's just go ahead and lift sanctions, let them complete it. No problem. No more red tape. Let's complete this as soon as possible. The ships are still actually building. It's not. I just think that, upon people out there just do a little self-examination of the situation I described, and there's a lot more detail to it. But the same type of situation, upon self-reflection, what would you have said if Trump would have done the exact same thing? The exact same thing. Oh, there'd be a congressional inquiry. He's working with Putin. He's trying to, work with Russia so they have leverage over Western Europe. But Biden did the same thing, opening up pipelines in other countries, closing, stopping them in our country. I mean, don't come at me, man. Don't come at me with this environmental stuff anymore, Bonnie. All this environmental BS. Oh, we're leading the world. We got to set a good example. So we shut one down here, Keystone, and open up Nord Stream 2, which is a much bigger project. Basically underwriting it, say, yeah, it's okay. You can go ahead and do that. It's BS, man. It's BS. Don't come at me with the environmental stuff anymore. If you want to talk about clean energy and how it's better, more efficient, fine. I mean, make that argument, because that, even though it's not true yet, that argument holds more weight than your environmental argument. I'm tired of it, man. I'm sick of it. This globalist stuff, Roger doesn't like talking about it, but maybe Josh will hit on
it. Dude, so the Nord Stream 2, and I've been so busy with work this week, I missed it until you hit me with it this morning. So one of the reasons that Anthony Blinken put out that they decided to waive the sanctions because they didn't relations with Germany. So this is from Blinken. Concerned about Germany. I don't know. Germany has been taking us for a ride financially decades. And then, you put Merkel in there and there's all sorts of problems. So come to find out, so the German CEO, Matthias Warnig, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing Kurt Schlichter's when he was on. So yeah, so he's the German CEO, running the German piece for Nord Stream C2. So guess who he's a lot of, and guess what his background is? He's a
Part of the
long time.
Stasi.
Yeah, he's a long time, and he's a former Stasi. He's former East German Stasi. So what we did is Biden, who accused Trump of being an agent of Russia, who accused Trump of being a Nazi, who accused Trump of all these things, he just handed a major victory to not only Putin, but a former East German Stasi officer. Yeah, I'm with Luke, man. You guys don't come at me with that. Don't come at me with the environmental stuff, and don't come at me with, Biden's hard on Russia thing, because he just handed a major victory, and it's undercuts Ukraine. Like this really kneecaps Ukraine. So I don't know how much Hunter Biden made off this, but I guarantee you, just like New York's doing with Trump, you start really dig into this and Hunter, and I guarantee you follow the money, it's going to lead back to Hunter Biden and the big guy. So I don't know, Roger, what you got on it.
Well, first for the environmentalists out there, check out lithium mines. You guys ever look into lithium mines? Okay. For all these folks that are like, oh, we need, okay. So one, I get it. There's renewable energy as in sunlight, wind, all that other good stuff. One, you've got to make the panels, the batteries, that type of stuff to hold the charge, hold the energy, what have you. Take a look at lithium mines, and outside of just what you see, these massive holes, and I'm not against miners, right? I'm not against mining. I get it. But you can't tell me like with these pipelines are more environmentally, damaging versus these lithium mines, which, oh, by the way, it's not even what it does to the land. It takes 500,000 gallons of water to process or to mine 1 ton of lithium. So, put that in your pipe and smoke it, but go take a look at that. I tell you, when it comes to Nord Stream 2, I'm confused, and I was confused. Now he's just wrong. It goes back to, was it Robert Gates, right? Who said Biden's been wrong, his actions on foreign policy decisions. He's been wrong every single time. And this goes right back to that, because here is the play, right? The play is lift sanctions, let gas flow to Germany, because the EU needs it. The EU has a severe liquid natural gas shortage, right? And in return, Germany and other parts of Europe and the EU are going to help shore up Ukraine, to mount, some type of defense against another, land grab or whatever. Everybody remembers Crimea. What president did that fall under? Who was vice president when that happened? Oh yeah, that was Biden, Obama and Biden. So that's the thought process. But Luke, you hit it on the head. I mean, Russia's pretty notorious for like turning off the spigot. So it comes down to the administration has severely miscalculated the leverage. And so here's the Biden administration's mindset, is that they're going to let gas flow. And as they let gas flow to the European Union and Germany, when Russia mounts its aggression against the Ukraine again, they're going to turn around and say, by the way, we let you open up this pipeline, so we want you to come help defend the Ukraine. The problem is Russia's going to turn around and say, oh, by the way, no, you're not going to do that, because 27% of your natural gas comes from me, and I'm going to turn the spigot off. So you're just going to sit right where you're at and either slow roll help or just, flat out deny it, right? So it goes back to just a severe miscalculation of, as far as what leverage that you actually have. And I don't know, it just doesn't, it makes no sense to me. I mean, one, you talk about, you hit it on the head, both of you, what if Trump were to do this? Holy cow, right? You wouldn't hear the end of it. Oh, I knew he was in bed with Putin and this. And I would tell you this, if you look over the last couple of years, Germany has moved closer and closer to Russia anyway. They've moved closer. I think we've even talked about this in previous episodes where their relationship with Russia and China has actually strengthened over the last several years. And some of it you can't help, right? Because when you start talking about resources and those type of things, I mean, they're going to do what they need to do to prosper as a nation. And that goes back to, Luke being a globalist and me not so much. That's part of the movement from the left is this globalist mentality where it's about the world moving forward. And it's like, hey, guy, you're the only one with that mentality. And when I say guy, I'm talking about, the administration. You're the only one with that mentality because everybody else is looking out for themselves. So it's not, hey, everybody progresses and the U.S. goes along with them. We have to do what we got to do for our own survival, and I guess to make America great again, or like you said, we don't have to say America's number one. You can just say, hey, we're not number two, and we're above number two, or whatever heck it is. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out because I know they're going to allow the completion of the pipeline. Are they allowing actual gas to flow through it? Have you heard any of that or?
Yet, not yet. I mean, maybe in small amounts, but not.
And then I guess my other question is, so you let them finish the pipeline. I mean, even with sanctions, can you really tell them not to push gas through? I mean, if it's complete, what Putin's going to be like, no?
Mm-mm.
I mean, you don't have any recourse, right?
Right. It's too late, and it's gonna happen. It just sends a bad message, and we didn't do a good enough job trying to head this off. Now, let me explain to the audience real quick, because we got so much more to get to. Why the three of us, I believe, think this is a bad idea. It's not that we don't want Germany to have energy and we don't want the EU to have energy. It's not that. It's if you're a student of history and you look back on what causes serious conflict, it's usually a culmination of a number of events over decades. And this is one of those, you're adding a precursor into the mix that you're just one step closer to C4. And, when you factor all these things about Germany, France, you look at the leverage, as Roger said, over the Baltics, which Russia still thinks are theirs, as much as the Chinese think Taiwan is theirs. You add Ukraine into that. You add Belarus, going down into Moldova. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that could go wrong with this. You look at, the Russian government is already issuing official government passports to the citizens in the Donbass and Crimea. That's the first step to, no joke, annexation. This belongs to us now. We're coming up close to that. And this Nord Stream 2 pipeline will figure into that. When the EU starts talking about, well, should we condemn this? UN Security Council. I mean, this is gonna boil over, man. It is. Now, I'm gonna leave it up to Josh whether he wants to talk about that silly racist hag, Lori Lightfoot, or if he wants to talk about the Pentagon preparing to monitor social media, or if we want to start celebrating masks coming off. So, Josh, what do you want to talk about?
Man, D, none of the above. I figure while we're overseas, let's stay overseas, and then we can transition back to domestic. So everybody's obviously tracking what's going on in Israel right now. Up, Biden reached out to Netanyahu and said that Israel needed to immediately de-escalate the situation. Netanyahu basically gave Biden the middle finger because no foreign leaders respect Joe Biden, and Israel went ahead and started another series of attacks on Hamas. And so now you have, and so this is where I think, talking about that fissure that we're seeing in the Democratic Party, like it's starting to expose Israel thing going on. So it was a couple days ago, Congress got notified. They were officially notified on May 5th of the $735 million arms deal between us and Israel. And the majority of that arms deal are JDAMs. We see a bunch of JDAMs. And now, are those the same JDAMs that they're dropping right now? No, they probably didn't make it over there that quick. But it had to be approved by not only Congress, but it had to be. And so I know Jose Joaquin, or whatever his name is, Texas, he came out today and demanded that Joe Biden resign as president of the United States against for his stance on Israel, being pro-Israel and everything. Ilhan Omar, Tlaib, of course, the usual suspects have come out and deeply condemned for protecting themselves against the terrorist organization Hamas, and they've also criticized the president. Now, one thing about the Democrats is they keep everybody in line. So I have no doubt that those folks will be in, Pelosi's office, in short order to kind of recue their talking points, or maybe not. I don't know. Like, they are very outspoken about this, and they're very adamant about this not happening and everything. But again, I think with Israel, it doesn't seem to be letting up. Israel destroyed a building that it supposedly housed Al Jazeera and a couple other media outlets, and of course everybody's all up in arms about children being killed. Never mind that Israel claims they had intelligence that Hamas was using that for military operations, which is not uncommon with terrorist organizations. You take a hospital, and on the top, it's a hospital by all intents and means, and the top floor happens, an armory. So, and last time I checked with the Geneva Conventions, it therefore makes a valid military target. So, people are super, super upset with Israel. Joaquin Castro is his name, my bad. So, and also, I guess it was a week ago, a couple of days, maybe a week ago, a classified Israeli government memo got leaked. Pretty sure it was done intentionally. So it talked about the very first meeting with the elected to Congress, Joe Biden, with an Israeli elected official in Israel, and the report stated, and I quote, Joe Biden displayed an enthusiasm that signaled his lack of diplomatic experience, end quote. As because he came in and Joe Biden was telling Israel he was concerned about the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and the land that Israel had claimed in the years prior. So I don't know if that was strategically leaked or accidentally leaked.
Come on, man.
I'm going to say that it was strategically leaked. But again, it goes back to, they also spoke about how Joe Biden's very about praising Israel and standing by Israel, but in private talks with Israeli elected officials, he condemns them quite a bit. And he's very hard on them, so he's playing both sides of the fence. But, as you brought up, Bob Gates, that, Joe Biden's been wrong on every foreign policy decision for the last 40 years. And, he's wrong on the pipeline. He's wrong on a lot of things. Let's see what he does with Israel in this situation. So,
but he's pissing everybody off, right? I mean, so like generally speaking, if both parties are mad at you, including your own, you're either doing a really good job or you're doing a really bad job. And I know this is not going to be objective. I believe, like with Donald Trump, I think it's fair to say he pissed both parties off, but I liked his policies and I thought he was doing a really good job as far as policies go. When you look at Biden, he has pissed off both parties, and I don't think it's because he's doing a great job. And, I forget, I think maybe it was Josh Day posted something, but it's like, yeah, you guys see all those social media posts about, all the great things that he's doing, all the great things that his administration is doing. And it's like, I don't know if I can go back and name one right now, other than the $735 million that's going to help Israel and the JDAMs. But I don't know of any other successes that the Biden administration is having. I mean, it's definitely not the border, right? They sat there the other day and they were touting, well, look at what he was doing with the coronavirus vaccinations and stuff. Like, we were already at 1 million vaccines a day. I mean, a lot of this stuff has already been laid out for him. And all he did was turn around and screw it up from at least what I can tell. And the foreign policy is just, it's atrocious. And then now you've got this whole CDC guidance with the mask, wearing them, not wearing them, you're vaccinated, not vaccinated. We talked a little bit about him visiting Carter and the family last week or 2 weeks ago, inside the house with the Carters. He's not wearing the mask. And then he goes outside when he's not with them. And there's nobody around him for 10 yards. He wears the mask. It's like the guy's pretty much wrong on everything. I mean, I don't, I don't see any posts out there and I even follow like the Lincoln Project and a couple of these other places, and not to troll because very seldom do I comment, but I sit here because I honestly want to see what the left is saying. It's like, do they really think that he's doing a good job? And a lot of times what I'm seeing in the social media circles is that, yeah, we think Joe's doing a great job. Well, okay, well, what's he doing? Like, okay, I have experience. What, your experience could be really good or it could be really bad, right? So yeah, he's doing a job. You're saying he's doing a good job or he's doing a great job or whatever. At what? I mean, Luke, I don't know. Can you lay out some of his, and I'm not putting you on the spot here, but I mean, like, what accomplishments has Joe Biden had since January? And I'm being serious to the listeners out there. I mean, I'm not sitting here, trying to poke fun at him or anything like that. It's like, honestly, objectively, like, what has he done that's been successful?
Well, he did sign a lot of executive orders that pandered to his base quite a bit. So if you're looking at it from that end, I mean, I know what you're going to say. Well, what's the outcome of that? Well, there isn't any, but it makes people feel good. It's all Josh's feel good versus do good. It made a lot of people feel good. So I think if you're coming from the other side, we talked about the interim national security guidance. There's some language in there that really appeases his base. So if you're looking at it from that end, I guess maybe those are the successes. If you are brainwashed and don't have a lot of self-reflection, you'll see you might tell yourself, well, Biden's doing a good job with the vaccine rollout. Well, here's the thing: is that he did up or said he sped it up, and it did go out faster than the original plan called for. So, I mean, hey, okay, credit where credit's due. If that's true, hey, he sped it up, and that's a good thing as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. But yeah, I'd like to spend just a moment on some quote unquote good news that just makes me really shake my head. You mentioned it, Roger. It's the recent CDC guidance where the science literally changed overnight. The science follow science. And the science changed overnight based on, multiple testimonies by Fauci when Rand Paul was trying to read him the Riot Act, asked him, you've been vaccinated. And according to immunology, you shouldn't have to wear the mask anymore. And Fauci danced all around that. And it was he actually said, well, the science, he quoted the science. And then CDC comes out with the guidance that, okay, we're snapping our fingers, waving, magic powder in the air and saying, if you've been vaccinated, there's no longer a reason indoor, unless you're in whatever. There were a bunch of guidelines to that were confusing. But so Fauci was, asked about that on a number of news outlets, and he came back and actually said he contradicted himself what he said to Rand Paul, because Rand Paul accused him. He said, this is all for show, isn't it? This is all for show. You're trying to set an example to wear the mask, aren't you? No, I'm not, Fauci says. Of course not. There's science behind this. And then after the announcement, Fauci comes out and says, well, yeah, you have to set a good example, so the people will wear the mask. And that's why I was wearing it. And, I'm not going to read you all the news articles. You can go out and find this for yourself. It's all out there. And I've said this. We've all three said this from day one. We learned a lot through the, throughout the course of the pandemic about the coronavirus, some actual science behind it. At first it wasn't what we thought it was exactly. We knew it was serious, but we've learned a lot. But I think the three of us and the majority of our audience has stayed fairly consistent with what we learned in 10th grade science class. And man, I got to get this off my chest. It is documented fact that Fauci said, do not wear the mask real early on. And he has come out and said, the reason I said that was not based in science. It was so that our medical professionals wouldn't be, shortchanged, cause a shortage of masks. You know what? Those intentions might be good, but what that tells me is don't trust a word that comes out of this guy's mouth or the government's mouth. Okay? Because look at the fuel shortage. They're already saying, well, we're saying there's not a shortage because we don't want people going out and causing a shortage. I just tell the truth. Just tell the truth. Fauci has gone back and forth, and why people worship him, I have no idea. Okay, it's this. You know what? It goes back to this. It's identity politics, like that witless little fleck of phlegm, David Hogg. If you don't know who he is, count yourself lucky. But is somewhat of he's an internet personality now. He's very. I'll just tell you what he said, and you can make up your own mind. He put out a tweet. He's a young kid, so I'll give him that. But man, he comes out on Twitter and he goes, after the CDC guidance, you can remove your mask. He said, well, I don't want to remove my mask. I'm going to have to keep it on because I don't want people thinking I'm a conservative. It's like, oh, okay. I kind of knew that's what this was all about this entire time. A lot of people are genuinely concerned, and they're genuinely concerned, and they're wearing a mask, and that's fine. Okay. Everyone makes their own risk assessments. But when you start wearing it as a virtue signal to identify yourself that I care about you, that's why I'm wearing this mask. Conservatives don't believe in masks. I am not one of them. I care. This has just been the biggest laughable farce in my lifetime. I'll say this is the biggest laughable farce in my lifetime. Exposes so much levels. And I hope scholarly journals and books really look at this going forward. I think for a lot of people out there, unconsciously, especially younger folks age 30 and below, maybe even 25 and below, this was their 9/11. This was their chance to deploy. This was their national tragedy. So they jumped in with both feet, and we all saw what happened. And, that's my rant on the masks for now. We're seeing the fallout. If you've been listening to this show from the beginning, we called this fallout. We didn't know exactly how it would be because we're not economists, but there is significant fallout, and we're not through the woods yet. This is actually the hard part.
And you know what? I'm going to be a little shallower about it. I don't think it's got anything to do with that. I think it's people wanting to stay home. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I don't want to say I don't want to say majority, but a lot of these folks, and I can only take snippets of what I hear and what I've been on calls about and what I've overheard, but people are going to agree with whatever it takes, whatever belief, whatever ideology, whatever staying out there or somebody saying out there that will allow them to stay at home, live their current lifestyle, and still receive a paycheck. I mean, that's a fact. I've sat there and actually heard government employees say that, I hope Joe Biden gets elected because, I really don't want to go back to work and I just want to work from home until June or July. I mean, we called this last year with the teachers. That, hey, you know what? They're going to drag this thing out to the end of May. Why? Because you go right into summer break. Right? You go right into summer break and then, hey, we'll address this stuff, in September timeframe. And at that point, it's going to be something new. And so what it tells me is it's not because of the sickness or COVID or this or that, although there is a percentage, out there, there is a vulnerable percentage, right, that are worried about COVID, just like they're worried about pneumonia or the flu or anything else. So, I'm removing those folks out there. But there is a large percentage of Americans that are truly ready to wear the mask until the day that they die. That is a fact. I have literally heard government employees say, yeah, when they remove the mask mandate, I'm going to miss the little guy. I'm like, really? Are you serious? I mean, because it's a physical addiction. It's like chewing, right? It's that physical addiction they have. And it's, I was going to say, only ugly people like wearing the mask, but maybe I should put a mask on then. I don't know if our audience will appreciate that or not. But going back to David Hogg, so, it's within the last month. He did end up resigning from as the CEO of Good Pillow LLC. Remember, he was going to rival Mike Lindell's My Pillow, so he came out with Good Pillow, and apparently he's not a great CEO. So they took all his shares, and he's going to concentrate on college or whatever. Josh, on to bigger news, real quick. So, and I'll touch base with you. It wasn't just Fauci; it was also Dr. Barbara. She's from New York, and Pelosi, right? The Chinese New Lunar Year. Get out there and celebrate. Celebrate. Take the mask off, which is one thing that I actually agree with. I'm like, yeah, you should. But anyway, on to bigger news here, and I'm surprised this didn't actually come through, or I didn't see it on more prominent news channel. But the Supreme Court has decided to hear a case that is going to challenge Roe v. Wade. And this is interesting because we need to do an episode on this, because we touched base on it in back in our single digit episode back when we only had 2 or 3 listeners. Roe v. Wade, from what I could tell and what I've read, is one of the worst ruled cases in the history of the Supreme Court. I mean, I think if you just do a simple gurgle on it, I mean, they pretty much tell you there are 3 or 4 major flaws with this thing. And one of the reasons that nobody wants to take that thing back up is because they know it'll be overturned. And it'll be overturned, not necessarily based on the merits of the case, but there's just a lot of technicalities there that hey, these are all kind of jacked up. And if this thing ever gets looked at again, it's going to be overturned. So there is a case, Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, involves a Mississippi law that seeks to ban most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy, which is 2 months earlier than Roe and subsequent rulings, such as Planned Parenthood versus Casey, yada, 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 yada. So really it goes on to, do the states have the option to really make that determination? If they can, is there a federal law that can come out and provide some type of guidance or restrictions overall? But one of the things that, as we talk about, Roe v. Wade and this and that, this is one of those cases. You can't just take a case to the Supreme Court, right? It's got to go through, it gets ruled, it gets appealed, it makes its way up through the state Supreme Court, and it keeps going from there. But, I think we said early on with that early episode was, hey, one of these cases is going to come up that meets the criteria of Roe v. Wade, and it would not be surprising to me if it gets overturned. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Josh? I was actually kind of surprised I didn't hear it on any other news outlet. Have you heard anything about it?
No, first heard right there, and that's obviously that is going to be a right. That's all. It's been a hot button issue ever since it was passed. Voted on and confirmed, but it's never been settled law. And as far as that, as far as it being, what they refer to as a super precedent, if you go back to ACB's hearings, that big exchange she had with Amy Klobuchar, and Amy Klobuchar was, this is settled, this is precedent, and ACB had to school Klobuchar on, precedent means. And it's basically the cases are so well set, political figures that aren't challenging it, and you look at how many times Roe v. Wade has been brought up and discussed, and not necessarily challenged in this court, but challenged in political conversation, challenged in bills and laws, and questioned and everything. It is not when it comes to the U.S. legal system, it's not typically considered settled law. And so that is, then you go back to, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and everybody, and, they're all very much, one of the things that weighs heavily in Supreme Court decisions is precedent, right? Okay, what's the, has precedent? Is there any, and when the precedent is, there's this hadn't been settled, it's, man, dude, I couldn't imagine. I can't imagine the furor that's going to to ripple through if Roe v. Wade is overturned. I think it should be.
So this is this is what they're saying is being debated right here. So the Supreme Court is essentially debating if all state laws that ban pre-viability abortions are unconstitutional. So essentially saying, is there a constitutional right to abortion? What you're thinking is just the Supreme Court's really going to just throw it back to the states and say, hey, man, your voters choose. And if they choose to ban it, It's on your state.
Have it just sign a bill in Texas saying that
Yeah,
like, at 6 weeks, that's it.
Heartbeat bill. If the fetus has a heartbeat, doctor can't perform the abortion. And little known fact, I want to start hitting on local news a little bit because of the three of us, local news that kind of impacts everyone. And the three of us, like Roger said last week, we follow each other's hometown news pages on the social media platform that shall not be named by me. And it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to follow the local news, where we're all either originally from or living right now. And what I found really interesting, it actually made national news, and people are like, what the hell, what the hell town is Lubbock, Texas? And Lubbock, Texas, voted to consider itself a no abortions allowed in that city. And the ACLU is gearing up to challenge that. So I thought that was really interesting. And Texas is really, ramping up the conservatism. And maybe part of that is, an advertisement to California. Hey, don't come here.
Hey, and where did they get that play from? What playbook did they
Arizona?
take that from?
Is it
California. Yeah, it was the whole sanctuary cities for the illegals, right?
Yeah,
so now
exactly.
the Republicans.
And that's what I like seeing in this culture war is, the other side fighting back a little bit. There's a conservative political action committee out there right now that's putting out some pretty well produced commercials, calling out Nike, calling out Coca-Cola, calling out American Airlines. And it's like, for what reason? It's like, well, who cares, man? I mean, how do I give money to this pack? I'll give them $10. We're talking like 7-figure ads here. So maybe we'll try to post some of those on the page on our social media platform that shall not be named. But so let's save that hot button issue for a future podcast, because we don't want to get too heated with these topics. So let's now talk about a fairly tame topic of racism. So Lori Lightfoot, this silly racist hag, comes out, and when I first saw the story, I was like, "Oh no, somebody overheard that." She didn't say that. She said on the anniversary of her 2 years as mayor of Chicago, she's only going to grant one-on-one interviews with persons of color, no white people allowed. And I was like, that's just a rumor. No, she put that out. She said it. She goes, I talked to too many white reporters, only persons of color. White reporters not allowed. That was not based on merit at all. Now, look, I still might disagree with it, but if she came out and said, look, I don't like the coverage the white reporters give me. I don't like it. I don't like the quality of their work. So you know what? I'm gonna grant interview. Okay. At least you're starting off at a logical, footing there. But she did not say that. And I don't want to hear people's nah. You don't understand what racism is. It's about being, historically oppressed and, not being in a position of power. Lori Lightfoot is the mayor of Chicago. She is in a place of power. So if you're using that little strategy saying, well, she can't be racist because she's black, because she's not in a position of power, that holds no water with me. She absolutely can be racist. So, man, I mean, that is, I'm going to call it what it is, man. She is a racist. That's what we're coming to. And this is not, I'm telling you, don't sleep on this. Don't sleep on this when someone in a prominent political position says, well, I'm just not going to talk to these journalists based on the color of their skin. I mean, we don't even need to play the game. What if a white person? It doesn't matter. It's just as racist. It's the same. It's I'll use my word. The word that came to me as I strolled through the Chaz. It's breathtaking. Breathtaking.
Good Lord, man. You can't even make this stuff up. And they've made it the way, especially over the last several years, they've made it to the point that, well, if you're a minority, you can't be racist. And that's not the case. Anybody can be racist, right? Which kind of takes me on to the next topic here. So I want to talk about the social media policy of, and I don't know if this was confirmed or not. So we heard the headline. I think Josh, you might have shot it out. It was either you or Luke, and uh, I couldn't tell if the Pentagon actually spoke about it, confirmed it, denied it, whatever. But basically, the Pentagon, it sounds like they want to start screening social media accounts of its military service members. And from what I can tell, with some of these articles that have come out, it's not just about extremism. It goes on to like, well, hey, you're using language that we don't condone, i.e., foul language or whatever, right? Because the military doesn't do that at all. Which, by the way, on a side note, we have stopped using foul language on this show here. We're going to attempt to stop using foul language on this show here, so that maybe we can, so we can actually maybe stay on a platform longer than a couple of weeks. But it's not the extremist activities they're looking for, but it just goes down to, well, behaviors that they don't like. So basically, what the Pentagon is trying to do is get involved in your private life and say, hey, these actions that you're doing behind closed doors or even in a private account or something like that, we don't agree with, and so we can we can take disciplinary actions against you. So, which I do think that this is going to actually have a pretty big. The more you do that, okay, what's going to end up happening, because you've seen this happen already since Cambridge Analytica and all that other stuff. People just start going private with their things, right? Because if you notice, when MySpace and Facebook and these things first came out, it was used to connect. And your default privacy settings were automatically set to just public, right? Everybody can see everybody. Everybody can, you can friend everybody, and you can see your friends list and this and that. And then once the whole Cambridge thing came out, you started seeing this shift. And now, as more and more things are being leaked, as more and more of our, social justice warriors are out there turning people into their first sergeants and this and that, you're going to start seeing people say, well, you know what? Screw this. I am not going to be public. I'm just going to have a private profile. I'm going to go on to Parler. I'm going to go on to Gab. I'm going to go on to Mastodon, or I'm going to go to these, decentralized communication platforms, and that's how I'm going to express my ideas. Because, they think that, and this is from the left, they think that if they ban your speech or monitor your speech or censor your speech, it changes your behavior and your thoughts. And that's not the case. You're not changing anything by doing that, right? Because there's an education process that has to happen if that's what you truly want. If you truly want change, there's an education process that you have to go through, and that's not happening. But I guess my other question, or my question to you, Josh, is where does the First Amendment come in on this stuff? Now I can see if you're in uniform, right? Well, I say this, but apparently if you're the California National Guard, you can take a knee in political protests and this and that. But everybody other than the California National Guard who can take a knee for Black Lives Matter while in uniform and actually doing their job. But if you're out of uniform, you're at home. I mean, isn't there some type of violation of your First Amendment rights there, or do you give them all up as a soldier, or what's the deal?
So it's complicated, right? So when you talk social media and the military, we all know, everybody, the first thing that most people throw out is the Hatch Act. Well, the Hatch Act, what the Hatch Act wanted to, defend against and, kind of control, you getting up there in uniform, as sergeant major, and you have a formation, and then you proceed to, tell your entire formation how people on the left and how Democrats suck and how they hate America and how, they're the scourge of the earth, which, I mean, you wouldn't be wrong, but that was, now you as Roger, private citizen, you can go to a rally, you can go to a political event, you can go to a convention, you can go campaign for your favorite candidate. It should be without fear of any type of retribution. That's not the world we live in today. So what they're looking at, and so I tried, and it was at it was at a different classification level that obviously can't be. But when you look at it now, a lot of the policies that are out there, and I'm talking and each service has their own. They are what you can and can't do on social media, so everybody remembers, Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 134, the catch-all, right? That's where you're going to find your conduct unbecoming. And well, this post. I know you posted this as a private citizen, and it's a public post, so only your friends could see it. But that's detrimental to the good order and discipline organization, right? And so, who interprets that? Well, the commander interprets that, and that's very, very difficult to argue against, especially when part of your in processing to said whatever organization you're in, pick one. There's a policy letter that has been signed. It's been chopped off by SJA and it's been signed by a commander that says thou shall conduct themselves in quote an appropriate way, an appropriate behavior. Okay, well, define appropriate. And conduct that is not unbecoming, all that stuff. If this is going to come to a head, this is going to wind up in this at some point, not necessarily this policy, the Pentagon saying they want to do this, because there's a lot of DoD lawyers chopped on this. And so for people to say it's unconstitutional, it's illegal, well, that may be, but right now the legal system says that it is. So we'll take the good captain from 3rd Special Forces Group. This just happened day before yesterday. He has a Twitter account. It's his private Twitter account. There is nothing on there that states that he is a captain in the United States Army. He is in a car with one of his friends, girlfriend, whatever the case may be, and they're going somewhere. And a selfie of her and him, talking about they're going to something. And then up under that, he said, G's, the letter G, by the way. Well, if you Google the picture there, 3rd Special Forces and Twitter, it'll come right up and you'll see exactly what he's talking about and what he's referring to. Well, the Pound Me Too movement came out immediately afterwards in force. And now this young captain is the subject of a 15-6. Behavior, conduct of becoming an officer in the United States Army. For a comment that he made on his that was benign. Even a girl commented back on the Twitter. She was like, I don't care. She was like, are you serious? Look at these. Like, wait, I can't hide them. Yeah, they're there. And they're fantastic, is what she said. So, but everybody else had to be offended about it, even though the person he was talking about wasn't. And so, I mean, it even got to the point to where they are, people were screenshotting comments and stuff out of one of the officer groups on a social media platform that Luke shall not name. Screenshotting and posting it elsewhere, and they were kicking him out of the group. There's, you had that article about a month ago, the SF Brotherhood, the SF ranks, stuff, and people were like, they're spreading, hatred in these groups, and they're spreading, QA, conspiracy theories, and they're calling each other vulgar names. It was like, have you been around Army people? What kind of names do we call each other? Generally not flattering. So eventually someone is going to challenge this, especially when it comes to the private accounts. I think I already see a lot of people that are moving their social media accounts to, nom de guerres and locking their stuff down. The only thing that they can actually go through and look at is truly publicly available information. If your profile is private, they cannot look at your profile. That is one thing the lawyers have. It has to be 100% publicly available information. And so, man, if you're using a nom de guerre and you got your stuff locked down, and you're not using you as your profile photo, that ain't me. Back in the days in in Boston, I'd be like, oh, that ain't me. I don't know where you got that picture from, man. That ain't me though.
But even that, you're not
Deny.
protecting. I mean, we've got a listener, Dan, that he had issues with previous employment because somebody in the small group that he was in didn't like what was said and took took a screenshot and shot it to his employer.
Yeah, and
Right.
I think that's just something that you're going to have to, man, that's just something that, you're going to have to put into your risk calculus, and use that criteria laid out. Is somebody in this group, they're gonna order me onto the train? They're gonna help put me on the train. I mean, that's just something you have to run, especially if you're in these big groups where you don't know people. Especially like I'm pretty comfortable
Right.
with you two, but some other folks, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
It's a shame that it's become so tribal, and that's one of the reasons I'll say it. That's one of the reasons Facebook is starting to fail and it's starting to become a really crappy platform is because people are getting more tribal, and that's not how they were making money early on. They're very smart business people up there, man, very big brains, and they're figuring out how to continue to make even more money, but their platform's suffering because people are getting so tribal. When the Pentagon, I would like to have more information. Obviously, I'm not a service member, so this doesn't affect me. Uh, but it's like, how are they going to do this? Because I can tell you, it's not going to work. It's not going to work the way they think it is. Um, if we transport it back in time to 2003 or 2002, and let's say that Facebook actually existed back then in the same manner it does now, I'm sure the Pentagon would show a lot of interest in trying to find out if there's any radical Islamic extremists within the ranks, and we'd be talking about the same thing. And the tenor of the conversation might be a little bit different. My question though is, how are they going to do it? And I don't see a way, if it's a top down, if they're going to create a new I don't know who it's going to fall under. Who's going to monitor that? At what level is it going to be monitored? Is it going to be down at the command level, down to the battalion, down to the company? No, it won't. They'll manage it much higher than that. Yeah, I think if they came out and said we're going to do this at the company level, and I'm putting all aside for now, uh, but we're going to institute this program at the company level where the company know is encouraged to follow all of his or her soldiers and monitor their social media for whatever. Okay, at that point I still don't agree with it, but it's like, okay, that's kind of a better way for it to work, I guess. I don't know. But here's the thing. I don't think that we need this program. You're going to have things fall through the cracks. They always have. There was a horrible shooting, Josh, at Fort Bragg, I think in the 80s. Okay. Dude got up on the side of a hill and shot down a PT formation, killed a bunch of soldiers. That was in the 80s. Might have been in the early 90s. But you're going to have it's a reflection of society. You're going to have mass shooters in society. You're going to have extremists walking around in society. Does that mean you need a surveillance state? No. Now, the three of us in our background, I'm a big believer in the Army's threat awareness and reporting program if executed properly. But what that program relies upon is a tight, cohesive unit where people actually know each other. And, I, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist in the Army anymore. Of course it does. But we're getting further away from that, where it's just like, hey, look out for your Joes. Start at the lowest level. Squad leader, platoon sergeant, platoon leader, up to first sergeant, company commander. It's got to be functioning on all cylinders. And if you truly do know your troops, truly know them, those signs of whatever extremism they're worried about, which is nebulous, by the way, right now, whatever signs of extremism are being exhibited, those are going to be seen by fellow soldiers. And I don't know. I don't like it. I think it's going to be a big program. Yeah, it's a mess, man. Roger, what do you think? Is it a mess?
There's
You
just no
agree
way
with
to,
it?
there's no way to manage it. I mean, it's we delve into this a little bit on our private lives and jobs and this and that, and it's the amount of data is crazy. I mean, you basically have to go back to like the every soldier is a sensor, report on your buddies, report on your if you read something or this and that, and it's just you can create a lot of division in your unit. on that note, it's kind of related a little bit. So I don't want to go too far into it, but I want to throw this back to Luke real quick. So, very prominent news organization came out with an article. I think we both know what we're talking about, but came out with an article laying out some, some, I guess, activities that the U.S. government, goes into and does whatever. In my opinion, some of the things in that article can be sensitive. And let's say, for example, let's throw a hypothetical out there. So, because I know you're a big journalism guy, and you're the writer of the group. So, well, I guess Josh is now a writer too. So, both you guys being writers of the group, I throw this out to both of you. So, I'm all for journalism and everything, and I love freedom of the press, and I think you have to report on everything, and and I understand like whistleblowing and this and that. And there's a place for that, and procedures for it, what have you. Hypothetically speaking, let's say a journalist comes across information that has detrimental impact to our national security. Now, I know morally, or as a patriot, if I was that journalist, I probably wouldn't publish that. Right? That's just me. But I don't know. What do you think? I mean, should there be restrictions on information like that, and which I think should be few and very far between, right? Because I do get that it can be very subjective. But if you have information that is beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is detrimental to the nation's security. Should there be any type of restrictions or laws or clearances to restrict that information from being made out to the public?
Well, first, and I don't know the first thing about journalism, but I know like the very first thing about writing, like the very first, like this is how you put a sentence together. So call me a writer, whatever. Yeah, this is a tough one. It's a really good question, and Roger is an expert at this, but it's like a real deep topic, and thinking that I'm smart enough to come up with something off the top of my head, but I'll give it a try. That's a tough call because, first of all, the journalist has to let's assume you could assume one of two things. The journalist doesn't know it's classified. He doesn't know how much this will harm national security, he or she. They don't know how much it'll harm national security. They're just putting it out there because they're trying to make their name or, make a lot of money for their newspaper. But let's assume they do know it's classified information that would harm to grave damage to national security. Should there? I mean, yeah, the easy answer is, well, they should be a patriot and they should know that. Their organization that they work for should know we can't do this. And I think that there's some of that going on and in the corporate media where it's like, okay, we've got some information here. Should we put this out or not? How much, and they have their sources within the Pentagon or any, but then you've got, like Seymour Hersh and some of the more famous ones. I can't think of a single one of them right now that they're not necessarily, they write the story and then they shop it out to all these different outlets to see who will take it. In that case, I mean, a law against it, that's a tough one. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff in the U.S. code about this. I'm sure there is, where someone knowing that it would cause grave damage to national security and they publicize it, there's got to be a law on that you can't technically do that. And I'm sure the argument that a journalist would use was, well, I didn't know. And then you get into Snowden, where what I would like to explore someday when I win the lottery and I have unlimited time just to research random stuff, what I would like to do is create a timeline with Snowden, right? And be like, okay, if he truly believed the American people needed to know this because he felt like the American people's rights were being trampled upon, could he have done following, whistleblower protocol and stuff like that without, and actually addressing the problem instead of seriously compromising national security? And I'm sure there is a way, and I'm sure it would not have been easy. He did definitely take the easy way out, and the easy way was pretty hard. But I don't hold a lot of trust in the U.S. government, which is kind of ironic, but to message things. And over the course of history, there have been things going on that violated the constitutional rights of, American people. Tuskegee experiment. I mean, we'll take that one right there. Now, someone back in the day when they were researching Tuskegee experiment, I'm sure that was whatever they classified it back then. I'm sure it was classified at some kind of level, and there would have been somebody within the federal government that said, you can't release this. In fact, they never did, I don't think. I think that was a FOIA type thing. But it's like, if a journalist got a hold of that, I think that, even though it's classified, I mean, the American people need to know that that's going on because it's just flat out wrong. And I'm going to back to Josh. One of the things, Josh mentioned earlier about a lot of lawyers have, chopped off on these things. I recently was in a conversation with a person, and we were talking about something that happened a few years ago that was, in my opinion, to the core of my being, it was unconstitutional. It should not have happened. It was a highly publicized event, and people took a lot of pride in it at the time. And I was like, dude, that's unconstitutional. I don't care what you say, that shouldn't have happened. And he's like, hey man, 150 lawyers disagreed with you at the time. They all chopped off on it. And I was like, that don't mean I'm not a lawyer, but I know what happened and that was unconstitutional. So I don't put a lot of trust in lawyers either, less than the government, especially a government lawyer. I mean, who you trust less than that? So that's a really good question, Roger. I mean, a lot of issues with that. And it's a very kind of, you get, it's real easy to get into those gray areas with that. It's like, well, what about this? What if that? There's a more coherent answer than I do on this one. Josh probably be like, hang them all, hang them high.
Yeah, pretty much. So it is a good question. I'm glad he went to you first because I had a little bit longer time to think about it and look up try to consult the Oracle for the answers. The answer is there's not an easy one. So you go back to the founders. The founders, I mean, they wrote it. The freedom of the press is a key to to having freedom. They looked at the media as kind of a watchdog, over the government, to keep the government honest and on the straight and narrow. I don't think they ever envisioned a point where, the media sided with with one party or the other, But when you take a look at this, and there's no, I'm sure there's something in U.S. code somewhere about something, but the Freedom Foreign Institute work, really they say that the only way the government can stop a journalist or a media outlet from publishing something is that, quote, it will result in direct, immediate, and irreparable United States. So that's probably if the journalist actually goes to the government with a mother may I. 9 times out of 10, the first sometimes the first time the government hears about it is when it's on the front page of pick your periodical. So there are some things, and we go back to, Desert Storm's a great example, right? So Desert Storm was one of the first wars that we got to watch in almost real time being fought on TV. And you go back to a lot of the briefings that Schwarzkopf gave, and then and Colin Powell gave, and even Schwarzkopf made mention there was a couple times where they took reporters before the and they gave them a little bit more than what actually got aired on CNN. But you take these people, and it was a different time back then. That was the first big war since Vietnam. And a lot of folks were still mom apple pie baseball and the American flag. They, like you said, Roger, they were patriots, and the reporters knew, they understood, like, what, I'm going to sit on this until this event is over. I'm going to is over because I don't want to do something that would potentially result in harm to somebody else on the battlefield. Now you have those clowns out there like Geraldo, who absolutely did not take that tact. You have the reporters on the beach in Mogadishu in 1992, 93 when they landed, and all of a sudden it's like, who are all these damn people? It's like, oh, all the reporters, look, everybody's here, we're going to broadcast it live. because we hate our country. So I don't think you have that. You have some. I won't say all, but by and large, man, you don't have that sense of patriotism in the media these days. That, hey, you know what? I know this is classified because the source I got it from says, hey, this is highly sensitive. This is highly classified. Well, right then, it's not like so a reporter's going to go, well, I don't know. I didn't know that was classified. Yeah, you did, because your source told you it was. Because your source told you can't use my real name. You can't do this. You can't. In that article that came out, there was a lot of stuff in there that should not have been published for sure. Some of it was a little like, yeah, that's not really like that, but there's a lot of stuff in there. You're like, man, it's not good. So I think we should do an entire episode dedicated to the First Amendment and really get in the weeds on this stuff. We can do it right after we do our amendment episode that I know Luke is still silently preparing for. So yeah, man, I'll throw it to the Lukester.
Okay, well, I guess that means Josh will close us out after we take it one more time around the horn. Yeah, that Second Amendment one will be good. I'd like to get a special guest on for that. I'm going to shoot to try to get some kind of somewhat high profile special guest and get their opinion on that. No promises though. So folks, appreciate you listening. We covered, I think, a record number of topics in this episode. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 topics. So one thing we didn't really hit early on in the episode, we know probably only have one person still listening, but this one person, whoever it is, Jed, Ryan, Scott, Chris, Brent, Russell, whoever, remember one thing. We want to reach out to you and we want to tell you that people sharing is caring. You just hit that little share button, email to your buddy and just say, hey, this is great. I want you to channel your inner Care Bear. All right. And you're like, well, I'm not a Care Bear. I don't, that's not me. I'm a manly man, but man, there are 10 different original Care Bears, man. There's Birthday Bear, Cheer Bear, Friend Bear, Funshine Bear, Good Luck Bear, Grumpy Bear. That would be Josh. Love a Lot Bear, Tender Heart Bear, Wish Bear, and Bedtime Bear. So, I mean, pick your bear, pick your Care Bear and channel that and share, because sharing is caring. Maybe we'll get that website up and you'll have a one-stop shop for everything. But I think it was a good episode. Roger?
It's we could actually spend more time on this, but there's something that we talked about conflation last time and how they're changing words and equitable and equity and this and that. An article was written 2 days ago, and it's on 538. And the headline to this is "Militias pose a serious threat. So why is it so hard to stop them?" And then it gets into this article where they say, and this is a quote from the article, "Not all militias are extremist, and not all extremist groups are militias, but sometimes the two overlap, and that's where you can end up with a dangerous combination." Okay. I'll leave it at this here, and then we can discuss this on a future episode. So according to the U.S. Code, the militia of the United States consists of all able-bodied males at least 17 years of age and is except as provided in section under 45 years of age who are or have made a declaration of intention to become citizens of the United States, and of female citizens of the United States who are members of the National Guard. The classes of militia are, and there's only two, the organized militia, which consists of the National Guard and naval militia, and two, the unorganized militia, which consists of the members of the militia who are not members of the National Guard or the naval militia. So I will leave it out there for our canteeners to kind of chew on that a little bit. I don't even want to credit this article at all, but you go to 538.com, type in, they filed it under, and it actually says filed under right-wing extremism. So look at what they are doing with the term militia, right? I know a lot of our listeners are educated out there, so take a look at what our Constitution states about militias, especially like the 2A. look at what the U.S. Code defines as militias, then look at what some of these states are doing that we've brought up several times when they talk about gun rights and classifying or entering, adults 18 and over into their, state militias. So with that, that's my piece there. I'll throw it back to Josh, and he can close us out with his final thoughts.
I love the militia language. I love it.
So evil. Evil. Militia.
It'll be a good episode. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Until next time. Believe in the science and keep your canteen cups full of entirely secured.
Yeah, man. I pulled that article up this morning. I'm like, are you serious, man? I mean, it's and 538 tried to push themselves out as like a middle of the road, because I think Balmer, he either owns it or funds it or whatever. But dude, they just keep pushing farther and farther to the left.
Yeah, that's not in the middle at all. I mean,
No,
I rarely see an article on there that's,
No, 538. Wow. They're off the reservation.
And I want to believe that they, at least when I heard he was on, like when it first came out, I don't know when it first came out, he was it was probably 3 years ago or whatever. And I saw him on one of the news channels, and the way he was pimping it was like, hey, we want to be middle of the road. There's going to be some left, there's going to be some right, but we really want to be middle of the road. And yeah, dude, there's no middle of the road there. That they are so far left. It's not even funny anymore.
And it's, another part of the U.S. Code is, if you're focusing on the security of a free state, right? If you're focusing on that and you're using the arguments like, well, the militia has to be armed for an oppressive government, well, according to the U.S. Code, it's illegal to overthrow the government.
Yeah, exactly. You can't do that. Why? Because it's illegal. What? You're a criminal.
Oh man, it's yeah. I've changed that challenge with that yeah. How do you define oppressive government? I mean, if you're asking the government, they're going to be like,
Sure.
We're not being oppressive.
We're not oppressive.
Those trains over there, those are going to the fun stations. We're not oppressing anyone. Yeah. Oh man, I'll tell you. Yeah, that's so Roger. What?
Oh, sorry. You need to get Colin Noir for our Second Amendment guest.
Yeah, I'm looking at because a lot of these, like we had a chance to get Jim somebody. He wrote that book, The Myth of White Fragility, and I tried to read it, and I was and now this dude's profile has exploded, and I think he would have come on if I would have just said, hey, come on the show, let's do it, and just made time to do it. I think like 3, 4, 5 months ago he would have. Now I just don't think he has time. So here's my thing, Roger. Especially, I'm going to let it cool off for like a week. But Ricky Schroeder, because he came out for Rittenhouse and all that stuff, and his name is kind of shit right now because of the whole Costco thing. I don't know if you saw that. Oh yeah, some Costco guy, he walks in, and he doesn't have his mask on. The Costco person's like, "Hey, you got to put your mask on," man. He just goes ballistic on him. So, yeah, he's kind of like a kind of a has-been kind of guy, but he still has name recognition, and it's like, man, if we could. So I emailed his production company. I'm going to email him again. And because I just haven't heard anything, and so I'll be like, yeah, and just and tell them it's going to be a Second Amendment type thing, and we want to get your views on that.
No,
so on the mask thing,
hope they don't watch our YouTube video.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of obviously private companies being able to say, hey, you know what, you need to wear a mask in here, if you're going to come shop here, because you will make the decision on, hey, if I really need something in there, I'll wear the mask and whatever. And if I don't, then I'll choose to go somewhere else. But then it takes me to a broader question. So then can private companies tell you what you can and can't wear? I mean, to an extent they can, because some places are coat and tie. But I mean, where's that line drawn? Hey, to come in here, man, you need a pro mask and flip-flops. I mean, can they do that? I guess they can, right? They're
yeah.
I can. I mean, stores can establish dress codes, and hey man, no shirt, no shoes, no service. To an to an extent. I mean, I think stores should be able to tell you, ass and put on a shirt and shoes and act like a semi civilized.
But what if they're like, hey, you
Well-
need to wear a pink ball cap before you come in here, or we just don't allow it?
I don't know.
Well, the no shirt, no shoes, right? The justification they use for that, the stores, the real justification is we don't want the riffraff coming in here, right? But you get, go down to South Padre Island or, Gulf Shores or wherever, and there's people walking around Target without a shirt on because, this is what everybody does. Everybody looks like that. But the argument that they use to justify it is, well, it's a sanitary thing. It's unsanitary. It's like, okay, I buy that. But I'll tell you this. If you really want to get down to sanitation and sanitary, everyone should mask up when they're going to a store because what's coming in and out of your mouth and nose is nasty. Okay. It just is. Yeah. And I'm not talking about COVID. So whatever, man. The store wants to make me wear a mask. Fuck, man, I'll put the mask on. I'm just more pissed that now I'm going to have a mask in my pocket all the time. It's inconvenient. It's inconvenient. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
See, now though, it's one of those things. If you get ready, now you go somewhere and you're like, oh, you require a mask, but your competition does it. Not a problem. I'm going to go spend my money at your
exactly.
Yeah, easy, Roger. So to the studio audience, you're going to get a little special treat here because you're not going to get to hear everything we said because Roger's going to edit out a little portion of what I said earlier, and you'll never get to hear it. But if you subscribe to our website, that was dumb. I can't believe I said that.
It's all good.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
It's all good. Maybe we'll leave it in there. Who knows?
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Oh, talk about shooting yourself in the foot. Oh.
All right. Well, on that note, again, thanks for everybody out there who's, who continues to watch us on YouTube. Definitely hit the subscribe button, share that bad boy. We didn't plug him for the first time, but Carlton Zeus, I know his music's still not on our YouTube channel, but Carlton Zeus does our intro music. Check him out on Apple Music or at www.carltonzeus.com. And for all our canteeners out there, stay safe, stay healthy. Like Josh said, take those damn masks off your face. I can say damn. Yeah. Take those damn masks off your face and keep your canteen cups tightly secured.